Hey, good day. Welcome to the COAA podcast, which is devoted to the idea that a team of people led by a good owner sharing best practices in a culture built on trust and respect will complete better projects. That's what this is about. It's a new venture for COA, but we're really excited about it. And we're super excited to be talking today with a friend and a devoted COA leader, Allison Muth, with Medxcel. Hello, Allison. And if you would, just tell us a little bit about your journey in this industry and how you wound up at Medxcel and what you do there.
Sure. Great to see you, Howie. Happy to be here. My name's Allison Muth. I am currently with Medxcel. I am the Regional Manager of Construction for Texas, supporting all the Ascension Seton facilities here in Texas. So I've been here about 15 months now. Prior to that, I did continue and was in healthcare, representing an owner, Texas Children's, primarily in Houston. So I'm in Austin now. I was in Houston, helping and supporting Texas Children's for 15 years, and help them come into Austin as well. Spent a few years in Austin supporting Texas Children's, but certainly from an owner's perspective and helping them grow their system, renovate, build new buildings, all that good stuff. I did dabble in architecture, so my degree is actually in architecture. Um, so I have my bachelor's degree in architecture and worked a little bit in DC in traditional architectural firms. Also worked in Houston in an architectural firm that ultimately is what brought me to healthcare. Just one of those journeys of you just don't always know kind of the pathway and types of projects you want to pursue in architecture. Landed with a firm in Houston, was there with the firm for about 6 years, and ultimately the last few years was focused on healthcare, which I really started to learn to be very interested and want to know more about an owner's vision and why they were doing projects, which is what took me out of architecture into an owner's world. And so I've been on the owner side 20 years now, which seems crazy, but have been here a long time and really enjoy it.
Yeah, so on that note, Allison, and even though it's going to go back 20 years, 21, 25
Yeah.
years, um, this might be a tough one, but I bet you can do it. When you transition from being a design professional and to be, you were a little too humble there. You didn't just dabble. You were doing some pretty cool stuff on the
Yeah.
architectural side. But the transition from being a design pro to being an owner, did you struggle with that at all? And if so, what kind of maybe turned the tide for you and woke you up to the
Sure.
differences in being an owner now instead of being the design professional?
Oh, that's a great question because I was just, I mean, I knew from an early age I wanted to be in architecture. I wanted to help people solve problems, give them better spaces to function in. So I was actually surprised myself that I was even interested in leaving architecture, going to an owner's world. But what was drawing me to that is I wanted to know more about why. And so I was getting a little flustered, quite frankly, on the architecture side, like focusing on one project, getting it done and then leaving it and not really understanding what happened afterwards, things like that. I actually got in trouble quite a bit. Like you can't spend all that time there with the customer kind of thing, which is, good and bad. But, when I did transition to the owner side, it took me probably, I mean, a solid year, almost 18 months to really understand what it took to represent an owner and really manage and deliver a project all the way through an initial conception of an idea, through occupancy and then sustaining that, turning that over to folks that were really our counterparts in facility operations. And it was a lot to learn. I thought, coming in as a young architect, I got this. I can handle this role, but it was a lot to learn. The level of sophistication of an owner's just organization, how they're put together, who reports to whom, who's responsible for what, who do I go to for support? Because there was also typically, and maybe healthcare specific, but there's a lot of internal ownership to all the different, I'm going to say, parts and pieces of a facility. And so there was a lot to learn, and even just interesting to learn, how folks were selected and how you bring people together, choose different folks to work with. It was eye opening, but in it, like I said, it took me a solid 18 months to really, I would say, ground myself where I was confident being on the
Mhm.
owner's world, coming from the architectural world.
It's a huge transition, and it's something that, as you know, we get into a little bit in the owner training institute classes. Pretty much no
Mhm.
matter where you come from, folks that come from the construction side have a different struggle, but it's a
Hmm.
similar one. Like, oh my God, this design phase. This is I've never, just give me some plans and specs so I can go build something,
Right.
right? So it's a transition, and there's no curriculum to teach you how to be an owner in college, right? So
No,
uh,
there was no manual. So it was an on the job training effort. That, again, you just had to spend the time to get to know. I will say though, coming from design was helpful, because I also realized there were folks within the owner's world that didn't quite understand that process. So it was nice to be able to bring that level of expertise and knowledge to explain why maybe designers do what they do and are thinking the way they are, so that owners were like, wait a minute, let's not get so quick to judge here, or let's understand. So I very also quickly became kind of an interpreter and a facilitator between that design world and working with design teams, and then the owner's world. And again, I think that's what's become such a great benefit, and for me, satisfaction over the years, because I continue to be that facilitator to help basically translate, what's happening in the design world, what are the owner's needs, and how do we come together and make this make sense, right? So we all deliver a project.
yeah, fantastic. Excuse me, I speak architect. I can translate
That's
that for
right.
you. Yeah. Um, so pivoting a little bit, Allison, for you, maybe you personally, but for Medxcel as a whole, maybe just within Texas or beyond, however you want to answer it. Maybe there's more than one, but if you could put your finger on your biggest day job concern these days, what is it, and what are you and your team um, sort of doing to overcome or handle that biggest challenge?
Sure. I think I, I would love to say there's one thing. There's probably a top three. Cost and availability of materials is top of mind. Can we get what we need when we need it? As we all know, projects are expected to be delivered faster. Um, but the question is, do we even have material available? And then just where the market is these days, the cost, what we thought something we could afford 6 months ago, the factors of escalation, material impact costs, supply demand, it's really had an impact on cost that we've been working to try to mitigate and manage. So there's a lot of things even just embedded with that, but cost, availability of materials, and even workforce. Again, do we have resources, actual human labor? So it's not just a question as well about a materiality of a product, a widget. We got to make sure, and especially in Central Texas market, are there available just men, laborers, workforce, folks that you need day in and day out on the job, to manage and install all these things as well. So there's a lot of things like that I think every day we're looking at and we're looking ahead. I think what's so great about working with an organization like Medxcel, we bring a corporate structure to all Ascension across multiple regions. So we have a view not only into where I'm focused in Texas, but to multiple regions across the US. And so we we kind of hear things quickly and understand and stay in touch with all the different markets. We're able to share across markets, either with trade partners or vendors, manufacturers specifically. I think that's something we do really well, is actually work directly with manufacturers. So sometimes we get so focused on the local workforce and availability, we forget. And I think that's what Medxcel does, is they look then holistically across all regions and look at manufacturing and how are those things being manufactured, from where, getting in line as early as possible.
Mhm.
But that means we have to know about those projects. So again, staying on top of and supporting Ascension to look ahead as much as possible. Early procurement is now just, it's not a thing anymore. It's what do you do during design? So we're actually procuring things almost at 15% if we have to, of
Mm.
completion of documents. That's for us like an SD level. So you kind of feel confident about the scope of work. You've run some initial, maybe reports and legends, and your design team and professional folks have run some things saying, well, I'm going to need a unit, air handler of this size. We're getting in line. And we're doing that across multiple regions. So we actually have a larger pool with manufacturers, that it's not just for me and what I'm managing in Medxcel in Texas, I need an air handler. We have multiple across the US. But that direct manufacturer conversation has been huge for us to help sustain what Ascension wants to do. But we're doing that so much earlier than we've ever done before.
Yeah. So, related, kind of related to that, Allison, because most of what you were talking about there, obviously cost, availability of materials, workforce,
Mhm.
et cetera, all kind of speak to, in my mind, kind of the holy trinity of how you measure project success, right? Like cost, quality, and timeliness or schedule.
Mhm.
Beyond the big three, those three, which is pretty universal for any project, what are some other ways that your organization and maybe you personally and your teams measure success? Because those are the big three probably, but there's other things. Sustainability, lots of what are sort of the other things besides cost, schedule, and quality that define a successful project for you guys?
Yeah, for us, and also the Ascension leadership is very focused on things like sustainability. And so we work really hard, and successful projects for us include some of those measurements of how much waste did we divert from a landfill? So how much are we recycling with our teams, whether it's something very small of a renovation project to something, ground up out of the dirt. And so what are we doing to measure how much diversion of waste that we're able to do with recycling? What are we doing as percentages of even what we ask our design teams to design, but then ultimately the contractor install? How much of that is prefabricated or pre-manufactured so that's done in a safe environment and then brought right to the job site? One, that helps us with schedule, but that also helps us with safety. And so how much of that can we actually accomplish on a project? And we try to measure that. Love to be 40% or more. Actually, they've got some pretty high standards, but think
Mm,
about all the things that you can do offsite or in a controlled environment and then bring to the project. Um, so, and again, of course, just sustainability. So what are we doing to make sure that the functionality of what we deliver, uses as little energy as possible, all those types of things, all the products we do, we pursue and track, uh, lead where it makes sense. But I think, again, if you just look at even how we standardize on materials, we meet a lot of those checkpoints without always getting, a certified or, a certificate at the end of the day. So we look at many of those aspects as well, because at the end of the day, that also, like you say, contributes to a successful project. Staying in budget and being on time, that's always expected. And we add to that, these additional measures as well to also indicate those performance measures of success.
beautiful. Yeah, that sounds great. Going back to kind of the opening of this, the name of this podcast is the COAA, and you could recite what the COAA is all about in your sleep. But thinking about kind of one of my favorite words in the definition of the COAA is culture. The word
Mm.
culture, and it may even become overused these days, but I think it still has a lot of importance. Talk about the importance, Allison, if you would, of culture within your Medxcel team, but also then within specific project teams, small project, large project, new construction, renovation. You and I both know I'm a recovering owner. You're a current owner.
Mhm.
It matters, the tempo, the environment, the culture of a team. What Talk about the importance of that and how you guys at Medxcel try to make sure that there's a healthy culture on your
Mhm.
projects.
Yeah, that's great. And that's one of those too that's sometimes hard to measure, but it is a focus. How do we work with each other? How do we work with ourselves within our own team? How do we work and engage with all of our trade partners, consultants that help us deliver these projects? And I think the first thing about, working towards a positive culture is just really one, holding each other accountable, and doing that in a way that, again, you're not picking on someone, you're not trying to raise, elevate an issue. You hold each other accountable that if you need something to get your job done, you're not afraid to, speak up, and ask others to say, hey, I need help. This is something that, for me to do my work, I need something from you, holding each other accountable for when we say we're going to deliver that information to each other. But you have to start off every project. And that's really something that I've been working on with all of our teams here is, every project, even though we've worked with a team before, every project we start off with, kind of a kickoff internal session. Okay, what are we doing? What are the goals of the project? What do we all bring to the table? What are our roles? So again, it's not always about, and I gave a big title at the beginning of this, but what is my role? So, we go around the room and introduce ourselves and we say our titles, but then it's always, but what's your role? What are you giving to this project? How are you going to be accountable for something about this project? And again, that sort of starts to then shape a different conversation. It's not about my title and where my stature is in an org chart. It's about what I then am responsible for. So just even simple things like that of how we talk about each other starts to shift that culture. How we want to make sure, again, it's a safe environment. We're getting together to have a conversation, and making sure everyone understands that at the beginning. Like I said, even if you worked with someone before from another project, we need to start off, and we do work to start off every project with a kickoff and make introductions and know where we are, understand each other, to help that kind of move forward. So it's one of those things that is a constant reminder. You can very quickly kind of get away from it, but culture, and I think a lot of it for me, that positive culture comes truly from the accountability. We hold each other accountable. And again, not in a way of like, I need to send an email because you didn't do something. No, I'm sending to say, hey, I was looking for this yesterday. What can I do? If you haven't gotten to it, can I help you with? Because remember, I need to do my work from your information. To me, that's what really starts to drive a positive culture, and one where people have a little more willingness to kind of be open. And I think in many years, long ago, I can remember that just wasn't, oh, I can't ask for help. I can't do that. I can't tell someone I can't make that deadline. No, I mean, I want you to be truthful. I want you to tell us what's really happening. And again, you'd be surprised then how others step up and say, well, I can help you. We can do this because it's everyone working together.
Yeah, I think in the lean world, that's called the term is reliable promises,
Yeah.
and that's kind of ultimately what we're all doing, right? I've
Hmm.
got these 8 things I need to do, but I really can't do them until you do your one thing. So what can I do to help you so I can do my subsequent steps, all that. Okay,
Yeah,
last one, Allison, and
sure.
even before then, thank you. I know your time is valuable, so we appreciate it. To me, there's several, but one of the reasons that culture really does matter is not so much when times are good and everything's going great and we're on schedule. It's when times are tough or when there's a problem or a challenge. That's to me when culture really reveals itself. And if
Hmm.
you've built a good foundation, then that good culture is so. On that note, when and it's not an if, it's a when, because every project and every team and every office they has its tough times, bad moments, stuff happens, like the bumper sticker says. So when it comes to moments of, let's say, tension or challenge, what's kind of and again, you've been at this for a while now on multiple sides of the table. What are some go-to strategies for you when there is, again, whatever word you want to use, tension, problems, strife, people aren't trusting each other? What do you do to sort of um, help relieve that?
Yeah, so those are moments when I actually kind of look forward to those moments because for me, they're opportunities. That's when I really get to help with the role that I have. But I think those are the moments where you do have to find that right person who can come in and help facilitate conversations. Because I mean, for me, I mean, I like what I'm doing. It can become very personal, right? And so people get on defense real quick. So, for me, the best way to work through those is you bring in someone who maybe knows a little bit, but not as in the everyday moment of a project, and comes in and can help have a conversation. Because to your point, I mean, not maybe whatever that situation, whatever has occurred, there was not just one person that got to that moment in time. There was a reason, and probably many people involved with lots of decisions along the way that created, that activity event that was, oh my gosh, now we got to respond to something. And so
Right.
I've always tried to look at it in that regard. And I think those that are most successful in projects have that mindset. It's not any one person. We're not looking for that one thing that made this happen per se. How did we get there? How did we all get there? And how are we going to get through this? And it may be the actions of one or two that are truly needed, but I think bringing in someone who knows just enough to help really facilitate through a conversation, so that it becomes less personable per se, and really can kind of, from a distance, just really analyze, okay, what happened, maybe how we got here. I mean, everyone always wants to kind of a report out of like, oh my gosh, but you do need to learn from it so it doesn't happen again, right? Mistakes are great to make once. You really don't want to make them twice. So you do have to dive a little bit into kind of how you got there. But I've always found, again, bringing somebody in to help just facilitate those conversations, step back a little bit, pause. And sometimes it's just a whole different, you just need to bring folks together and say, all right, let's just work through this. But again, it's that accountability to have someone on the team knowing that that might be a role they need to play, to be able to come in and help the team work through those situations.
Yeah, I loved how you started that too with and I knew what you meant. I knew you weren't saying yay, strife and tension, but
Right.
you look forward to those because now I can really contribute. I'm not going to be the
Right.
one nailing a nail or even using a mouse to create a BIM model, but now I can really contribute to the team. That's
Yeah.
classic Allison. So, hey, that's
Yeah.
it.
All
We're
right.
done. And thank you, Allison, as
Yeah.
always, for your time.
Certainly. Great to see you, Howie.